to this. Welcome, everyone, to In the Inquiry, the inner experience of leadership. Today, I am thrilled. Today, I'm speaking with someone who's really been a part of my professional life for over 30 years, Ken Levine. And Ken's career in cybersecurity is one of the most sustained leadership arcs I've encountered up close. 15 years at Cabletron, where a company that started in a garage grew to about $2 billion in revenue. Then NitroSecurity, which was acquired by McAfee, then Digital Guardian, where the company tripled in size under Ken's leadership. Then ShieldX, acquired by Fortinet, then Comodo. And now something completely different. Ken is CEO of Beacon Signal. It's a civic technology platform that's built around trusted information, public sentiment, and accountability, a modern civic commons designed to give people a calmer, more reliable way to understand public life. So, what I want to talk to Ken about today isn't the strategy or the exits. It's what it actually feels like to lead at that level repeatedly across companies, across decades, and across every major shift in the landscape. And what draws a leader with Ken's track record toward a mission this personal. So, Ken, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. Nice to see you again.
It's great to see you, Ken. So this is going to be, Ken, this is going to be the same format as always. I ask you talk, no right answers. Take whatever time you need. Ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So, Ken, 15 years at Cabletron, a company that went from a garage to nearly 2 billion in revenue. I want to start there, not with what you built, but with what that period formed in you as a leader. What did those 15 years actually teach you about how you make a decision?
Hmm. Well, one of the things it taught me is to make a decision. And if you're wrong, correct quickly. But don't dally too much. Now, obviously, certain decisions require more planning and strategy than others, but in general, my brother and his partner Craig, they were very, very action oriented and weren't afraid to be wrong. So one of the leadership things that it taught me is, um, no decision is the worst. Is the worst kind, and so I think that that sort of has stuck with me. I can't always say I've been perfect with it, but that's always sort of stuck with me. Of we gotta do something and let's go. I think I'm probably a little less impulsive than my brother, so I try to take maybe a little bit more of the data coming from different people to try to make the best educated guess. But a lot of times it really is an instinct, and you got to go.
Excuse me. So, my recollection is the Cabletron culture was intense and specific. So, how much of what you learned there traveled with you, and how much of it did you have to consciously set aside when you moved into the startup world?
Well, so it's really interesting. The couple of things I'll say. Different era. Things we did, and you were there, Terry. Things we did you couldn't do today from a cultural perspective, and I don't mean that from a legal perspective, but I mean we were a hepped up group, and I think that none of us really had experience. Nobody did. It was a brand new market for everybody, and I think that allowed us the ability to sort of define kind of who we were going to be and established a culture of of a level of aggressiveness and work ethic that I think travels.
Mm,
I think and I think there are certain things that you can't teach, and one of them is the drive. And so, it helps you kind of look for the people that you need to that you need to look at. And and I think that traveled. I think the startup world is a little bit different in that you never have enough money and you can never get all of the right people that you want. Whereas at Cabletron, we were able to basically train everybody our way. Because again, there wasn't anybody coming in that had 10 years experience selling Ethernet LANs when they had just started a couple of years ago. So I think that I think that it was maybe a little easier to define our own way than maybe it is today, but some of the principles absolutely still carry.
Yeah, absolutely. So you watched the company scale from almost nothing to nearly 2 billion. At what point in that journey did the decisions start feeling different? When did the weight of scale change how you led?
Uh, Probably about 10 years in, I want to say probably mid 90s or so, I think was when we really had to look at how do you continue the growth engine. And yeah, I always used to say I just wish we could go back to selling boxes versus today's kind of subscription. But in reality, that ARR is so much nicer than having to sell new boxes every year.
Yeah.
So we had to continue to figure out how to grow. And I think that the sort of the just hit go and just train good salespeople and just go out and do it. At some point, you needed a little bit more. The training became a little bit deeper. We did something with global accounts that you're familiar with, and we needed people that could navigate much larger things. And again, some of it's intuitive, some of it we did have to bring in that expertise. So I think what I would say is that the decisions became uh, well, first of all, they get magnified the bigger you are. And I think some of the decisions that required any sort of strategic changes just it just becomes a little bit of a bigger thing. I think I watched my brother and Craig kind of be able to do everything kind of on their own as they wanted to, which worked for a long time. And then eventually you get to the size where uh, you got to always be looking at tweaking how you lead, the type of person you bring in, how you train them, what you expect of them, et cetera.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a specific kind of loyalty that develops when you build something from the ground up with the same people for 15 years. How did that shape the way you think about teams and relationships in every company after that?
Yeah, I would say, and I don't mean this in any sort of conceited way or anything, but I think one of the things I value most is will people work for you again? And I've been fortunate, and by and large, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple out there, maybe some are watching this, but by and large, I think people will, and I think it comes from a two-way loyalty, and um, I think again with Cabletron, it was such an interesting dynamic because to this day, I will run into people that will talk about what it meant to them. And some of them didn't have great outcomes. Sometimes it didn't always work out, and yet they did. So it was one of these fiercely loyal kind of things in both directions between management and the people that really make you feel a part of it. And I think that's something that particularly with startups, the core group of founding members are typically always bought in. But as you bring people in, you really want to convey that you're trying to build something that is a once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime kind of opportunity, and sort of paint that picture of where it can go. Sometimes it's tough seeing it when you're in the middle of it, but
Right.
I think that I still think loyalty is huge. I still think it's huge, and I think I always had to earn it, and I think I did. because I treated everybody well.
Hmm. Oh, I'll second that, third it, and whatever. Yeah, no,
Thank
I
you.
don't think I've had an experience like that since. So Ken, you've been CEO of NitroSecurity, Digital Guardian, ShieldX, Comodo, and now Beacon Signal. And each of those was a different situation. You had different technology, different stage, different market pressure. What I'm curious about is the interior of that pattern. So what does it feel like to walk into a new company, knowing the weight of what's expected and knowing you've done it before?
Mm. Well, when I started at Nitro, I hadn't necessarily done it before as the guy. I was one of the guys with Cabletron, um, and I don't really know if I knew what I was getting into until until it started. It was a very difficult situation. We we had an amazing base technology, but we weren't applying it to the right end product. Um, we had some financial difficulties, and everything else. And I hadn't necessarily intended on getting back to work, but one of the reasons why I did is there were a bunch of Cabletron guys there, and like, yeah, I'd love to work to work with them again. And you know, you, I think I probably had less expectations there than I did at some of the other stops, maybe because it was the first one. But uh, as we went into, say, Digital Guardian, I kind of said, well, here's a pattern here between Nitro and Digital Guardian, and I don't mean any disrespect to either company's prior regimes, but both were struggling. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, uh, I'm a fixer-upper guy. And I'd love in a future life to come back as a CEO of an existing $500 million revenue company that's making money and everything else. That was not the path I chose or the path that was chosen for me. So they all had issues. And
Mhm.
part of the challenge and the fun for me was looking at it as kind of a puzzle where you had certain pieces, some work, some didn't fit, and try to get them all together and re-strategize, reformat, and go.
So there's a specific pressure that comes with a track record of exits. The market, the board, the investors, they've read the bio. How much of that expectation do you carry into a new role, and how much of it do you have to actively set aside to see the new situation clearly?
I think you've got to carry that. You've got to carry that expectation forward. These companies are in it to exit at eventually at some point, and so that's always the goal. And I think the the tension, if you will, and I'm not sure if tension is the right word, is you've got to build a good business, but you also have to build it with an eye towards what's going to be attractive for somebody to acquire. And usually there's synergies between the two, but sometimes it can impact certain decisions that may take 2 years to see a return on. Maybe you don't do because you're thinking you're not going to be there for 2 years.
Hmm.
So I think the expectation of exit is certainly always there. Um, and I think all the different companies had different metrics. They were at different stages. ShieldX was really just trying to get kind of the initial revenue going. Whereas Digital Guardian had a revenue stream, it wasn't growing. It was flat to even a little bit declined, but they had a customer base, and so each one is sort of different. When you've got something, you've got a model that worked. And if you can find a way to replicate that, assuming it's replicable, then that should theoretically lead to a quicker exit. But I think um, coming in with any kind of venture-led companies and the board of directors, I would say alignment between the CEO and that board has to be
Right,
really good, really good.
right. So you've been through multiple acquisitions from the CEO seat, Nitro to McAfee, ShieldX to Fortinet. What happens to decision making in a company going through that process? What gets clearer? What gets harder to see?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things is no deal is done until it's done. And so you've got to kind of limit the distraction as much as possible. And that can be tough. The acquiring company wants a lot of information, they want a lot of stuff. You got to try to kind of shield the team a little bit from that. And so in some respects, it's the hardest of the leadership challenges. In other respects, it's also what's it's kind of the most fun. But keeping heads down, knowing that a lot of people have to get involved when it comes to some type of M&A is certainly is certainly something to keep an eye on. And by the way, I've also had some opportunities that didn't close. So I know that feeling too.
Mm.
And maybe that's partially why I know you
Right.
have to assume it's not going to close. But your decisions absolutely become your people decisions. Um, do I bring on somebody new now, knowing that we might be part of another company in 3 months? Do I fill that spot? Um, you know, do we go after that channel partner that could take us 9 months to onboard if we're not going to be there? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of those sort of short and long term decisions that creep up.
Got it. So Guardian, you triple, it tripled in size under your leadership. So that kind of growth generates its own noise, right? New stakeholders, new complexity, new expectations at every layer. Where does the signal get most distorted in a company growing that fast?
Um, I would say one of the challenges is what is the cost of the growth? Literally, what does it cost you for that growth? Um, and that's a signal that comes in that you've got to really be aligned with everybody on what that is because growth does come with a cost typically.
Hmm.
Digital Guardian, we were a perpetual license company, and we changed at the end to a subscription model. Hugely disruptive. I mean, hugely. Uh, and it's something that it actually we went down in revenue because of that. But in the long term, it was incredible. And but those are signals coming in that are like, okay, does everybody have the wherewithal to see this through? Because there's going to be some pain, and the financials may not look that right. And it's probably maybe a lot of people today don't really see that because most companies kind of start out that way. But again, 10 years ago, I guess was what it was, and maybe it was 7 years ago that we moved it to Digital Guardian. So that's the type of thing that's a change that is necessary, but you know those signals need to be aligned. Those signals of, oh my God, we're gonna miss this cash collection by this because we were getting 3x the cash coming in for this same deal. Now we're getting a third of it, or whatever it is. So I don't know if that answers your
Oh,
question.
that absolutely does. That's very clear. So I know this from personal experience. You built a reputation as someone who fights for the people around you, who goes to bat for them, even when it's costly. That's not, in my experience, that's not a universal leadership trait. Where does that come from in you? And what has it cost you?
Hmm. So where does it come from? I don't know. I'm not sure I really believe in the whole zodiac thing, but I am a Libra, and I think there's a sense of justice that comes with that. But I can't fathom the idea of screwing people. Now, again, it's not saying that some people might think that I did, but I'm not so sure. Um, it's just not worth it for me. And but it has been costly, to your point. It has been costly. Let's face it. Uh, you don't become uber successful by by being a super good guy. And I'm not saying I am uber successful. I think in order to do that, there probably needs to be that level. And I've worked for some of those people that are more on that side. I don't know. I don't know what it comes down to. It's been my DNA and it continues to be. I just seethe, if there's a certain rep that's supposed to get a commission and
Hmm.
somebody says, wait, that's too much, or that's a double pay, or I don't want to do that anymore. I can't do that. I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Well, bless you for that. So what do you protect most fiercely as a leader right now? Not in terms not in terms of the company or the technology, but internally. What do you work hardest to keep intact?
Well, so I don't want to overstate what I'm doing now. I'm sort of more of a co-CEO with the other guy doing most of the work, and I just kind of I just get to enjoy the fruits of the labor. But I think I like to hold on to the experience where there's not much in the startup world. There's just not much that I haven't seen. And so I'm advising a couple of companies. I'm on the board of a couple of companies, and um, and I just try to bring through that level of, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And sometimes I just assume they have because they're smarter than me in most cases, but sometimes they haven't just because they either haven't experienced it or they're operating on a different plane. So
Mhm.
um, I think that the uh, you talk about what you're doing with clear signals. Um, there is such an huge amount of data that's coming in for any business, whether it's from your CRM tool or your customer success tool or your engineering tool. Or there's so much data, and how do you synthesize all of that, and how do you get it all together, to make the most informed decisions? And so those are some of the things that I can try to do. I've never been the most detail-oriented guy, so if there's something I have to continue to make myself do, it's that. I have to, um, and I get some enjoyment out of it because it doesn't come naturally. So it actually feels good when I say, all right, I just spent 3 hours on that spreadsheet because it's not enjoyable for me.
Got it. So you've led through acquisitions, through downturns, through the full pressure of being the person everyone looks to for certainty. What does it feel like on the inside when you don't have the certainty the room is looking for and you still have to lead?
Mm, very tough, very tough. It's a bit of a uh, there's some of it that's like performative in a way, I guess I would say. Like you can't show it all, and yet going back to I'm pretty open and pretty transparent about things. So yeah, that can be a little gut wrenching at times.
Mhm.
Are you saying things that is technically for the good of the business and for the good of the company? but not necessarily prepping some of the employees for what might happen. That's a tough tension spot.
Yeah. So, what's the decision across all these companies that you'd most want to revisit? Not to change it necessarily, just to understand it better.
Mm. Um, I would think in a couple of cases it's initially taking the job in the first place, uh, but I think that probably the one that I guess is probably most prominent in my mind still is Digital Guardian because it was a really interesting thing that just, at least for me, it just started to go haywire towards the end. Um, but I think there were so many decisions that I look back on there, and that's kind of the funny thing. You don't necessarily know that in the day any one of these decisions could be the decision, because there's a lot of them. But we struggled with, and I don't know if this is too detailed for what you're looking for, but um, we had a sort of an aging technology that was really good. It still did stuff that nobody else did. It just didn't always do it 100% of the time. And so there were some reliability issues that were starting to come up. And yet we had customers that couldn't live without us. And so um, we, probably what wound up, putting in the cycles of a fateful decision is what do we do with that tech? Do we rewrite it? Do we reformat it? What do we do? Or do we just scale down what we're trying to do with it
Mhm.
to get the reliability up? And I think that is the type of, you know, that is the type of decision that really only I could make at the end of the day because there were so many different opinions around the table. And not being an engineer myself, it was a tough, it was a tough decision. So I think we probably did a half in, half out kind of thing, which was probably not the right decision at the end of the day. So yeah, that's probably one I'd have back. If I had it back, I would have said, let's just set up a new team and start from scratch while we just keep patching what we got.
Got it. So I want to pivot a little here to Beacon Signal. So Beacon Signal, it's a completely different kind of bet than anything you've led before. Cybersecurity companies, enterprise technology, B2B sales motions, and now um, a civic intelligence platform designed to reduce noise in public life. What drew you to something this different? And what does it feel like to lead toward a mission that's explicitly about the common good rather than shareholder value?
Yeah. Um, so I guess part of of my makeup in addition to business is I've always been passionate about politics, baseball, and I love talking religion. So two of those three are no-nos, but I always love talking about them. I was just getting to a point myself where if I had the wherewithal, I would have loved to have done a podcast about sort of what does the middle look like? What is this? What does this not geographic center, but the political center of the country look like? Where I believe there's 70% agreement on most issues, and then it's so let's go debate the other 30. And it was just so maddening to see kind of this push to the edges, this division that was happening, and a lot of it was being. I'm not saying that this was an intentional outcome, but a lot of it was the business model for social media companies and other media companies, um, and then we've got a political environment now that it's barely recognizable, and so. what I and sorry, then the last is having kids in their 30s and and talking to people that are younger. There's a lot of checking out that's being done now. It's sort of like I just can't deal with it anymore. I'm checking out. Um, and my wife spends some time on social media, mostly to find these funny things. But she gets bombarded with all the crap too, and she's like, I just can't deal with it anymore. So it was trying to say, how can we do something that uh, in a way is an outlet for my rage about all this crap that's going on, um, but do it in a way that maybe coaches people up. And I guess I would say, Terry, it's easy. I think it's easy to get outraged and yell and scream, and you feel good for about 30 seconds. I mean, that's the dopamine hit, but you don't get anywhere with it. And so, how can we kind of you know, come up with a more shared reality. And so I was ready to do something. I didn't know what when I was introduced to this guy Lawrence, who had been business planning this for several months. And we came together, and I said, "Okay, I have no idea whether this is going to work or not,
Mhm.
but you're attacking a problem that I think is a clear and present danger for us as a civil society."
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a little bit. I still want to get rich doing it, Terry, but there is a lot of part of giving back and kind of just restoring uh, civics.
Yeah, so you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean the problem I see that beacon signal is solving is that you have too much noise, not enough signal, accountability gaps between what leaders say and what they do. I mean that's a
Exactly.
problem you've been navigating internally as a leader your entire career. So is that connection conscious for you? Did the mission find you, or did you find it?
Hmm. I had not made that connection until just now. I have to think about that. Consciously, uh, no, it was more of a serendipitous kind of coincidence that I was trying to find an outlet for this, and a mutual friend introduced me to Lawrence, and he was doing this, and I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool. And the way technology has been advancing, particularly around AI,
Mhm.
uh, actually coming up with a solution was becoming more and more viable. And the irony, and I guess what kind of got me a little bit excited about this. You may appreciate this, but when you love SIM, when you love the security event management world, and you love this notion of ingesting things and making complex events and correlating them, every solution is a SIM. And this was kind of what we were sort of looking at doing, is that this when Lawrence presented it to me, he had amazing thoughts and details and everything, but he didn't know what to build. And so that's where I got excited. I was like, oh, let me grab a couple of the brightest people I know on the development side. And first, we got to figure out how we're going to ingest all of these signals. And then we can figure out what to do with all of that data once we have it in. And that's basically what we've done. So we've brought in some of the best sim guys around, and we've got this data lake. And so I guess that was kind of maybe what if I had no idea how to even go about it, I probably wouldn't have started it. But as we were talking through the problem, I was like, I know the analogous solution, not the exact solution, but I know the analogous solution, and that was exciting. So I guess there is a connection between the cybersecurity tools we built that had to deal with massive amounts of data and get down to the couple of signals that really matter. We're kind of trying to do that same thing.
Brilliant. So building something for civic life is a different kind of pressure than building for enterprise buyers. You know, the stakes feel different. The success metrics feel different. What's the hardest part of leading a company where the mission is this personal?
Um, I'd say first and foremost is, I mean, I never wanted to see anything fail. Uh, but this I really don't. It's actor. We have a lot of fellows and recent graduates that are around this product and looking at it for their generation, and um, it's just motivating. I mean, they need this. They say they need this. Their peers need this, and so I guess right now, there isn't a group of venture capitalists that fund these types of companies that I can go to like there would be for cyber. So, where to go to put the rest of
Mm.
of the deal together is something that I'm spending a little bit of time on.
Yeah.
Um, and but and then the other thing is I've never done a B2C before, and this is really a consumer oriented play. So that's kind of one of those where you know what you don't know and you back out of some of those
Mhm.
conversations, because there are people that know this better than I do, and fortunately we have them in the company.
Yeah, got it. What's the decision you're sitting with right now at Beacon Signal that's the heaviest, not the most complex strategically, but the one carrying the most weight?
Hmm. I guess it's um, and maybe it's more of a question of what we can do than sort of around the leadership or structural question, but it's um, can we matter to both sides of the aisle? Um, can we can we get to the point where both sides trust us and not say, that's a leftist statement or that's a rightist statement? Because we want to be completely apolitical, but it's hard. It's hard. I make the analogy of uh, if you're watching a football game and you expect the referee to call the same amount of penalties on both teams, but one team is holding on every play and one team is not holding, you can't expect the referee to still call it, you know, quote unquote down the middle. And so we wrestle with that a lot. We wrestle with uh, equivalency and things like that. And so we just try to take the R and D out of all of the equations and do it. But that's kind of
Mhm.
what weighs on me is can we can we get something that builds the trust and that is sticky enough to be used daily. Um, so those are, maybe those are too strategic than what you were asking the question
No,
about, but
not at
but,
all. I
but
think that
those are,
that hit to the heart of the question for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's I would say I don't think I ever necessarily expected I would be doing something like this, but it is so cool to talk about something that you just sort of intuitively know about. You know what I mean? It's um, again, not the B2C side, but as a consumer,
Mhm.
I know it drives me crazy, and not everybody agrees with me, but most I think we get agreement on the problem within about 2 minutes of any conversation we're having,
Mhm.
and then it gets down into, but it's such a massive problem. How do you solve it? And and that's kind of part of the fun is we think we can solve it. Maybe not all of it day one, but I think we can chisel it down, and the outcome we're trying to do, we still need to prove it, but the outcome is a better informed, better engaged, better participation of of us, of the people, rather than tuning out or retreating to your tribal camps,
Yeah.
because that's not sustainable.
Yeah. I like that, Ken, because I agree with you. I think my observation there are a lot of things that seem to be dividing us. And to the extent that you can bring something back to center, I don't mean ideologically back to
Right.
center. I mean as human beings. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor for sure.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you for that. And I agree with how you put it too. Is um, you know, I mentioned my brother a few times in relation to Cabletron. Well, my brother is on the opposite side of most issues as I am. But the irony is that within any given issue, we agree on like 70% of it.
Hmm.
And And so, because we're brothers and we love each other, we can have those conversations. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have those conversations. Instead, it's a
Absolutely.
hard no or it's a hard yes. And
Yeah.
I feel like the world is very gray. Not in a depressive gray, but in a in a black versus white,
Yeah.
we're gray. And I think we're starting to see that if we can take the hysterics out and
Hmm.
just present a calm and coherent approach to this, you
Hmm.
know, maybe people will come.
Yeah. Yeah, I support that all the way. So, Ken, I have a last question. Um, it's the one I ask every single guest I have on in the inquiry. It's what's a question you think leaders in your position almost never get asked that you wish someone would ask?
Um, how do you how do you how do you deal with the everyday stress? Do you have is there an outlet for it? And I say that in certain companies I had some trusted board members that I could talk to. In some companies I didn't. And when you don't, you can't really do these conversations below you. And so I think that's sort of like, so maybe the question is, what do you need from, let's say, a board level or or a mentor level that you're not getting?
Hmm. Great.
I know. What do you think?
I love it. Ken, this has been exactly the kind of conversation in the inquiry is built for, actually. So thank you for being willing to sit inside these questions. Obviously, I'm personally grateful based on our history. As I said before, you're one of the most outstanding marks in my career. You know, we talked about this before. Just your loyalty and support has been amazing, and I'm gratified that I have you on in the inquiry from a personal side, as well as the insights you've been able to provide today. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thanks for reaching out. It's always good to talk to you.
All right,
And
Ken,
I've enjoyed all of the friendship over the years.
it's been great.
All right, take care.
Bless.
Bye.